This is a lecture on research plumbing, and we're now going to start talking about data wrangling. In particular, we're going to start talking about some more advanced dplyr techniques that are very helpful when you're doing applied work. So, what's something that I have to do all the time? Well, I have to keep track of students' grades. So this is a silly little example that's going to illustrate some very handy features. So I'll start off by creating a little grade book here. I'm creating a tibble, and I'm generating some random quiz grades for a number of students here. I've got Alice, Bob, Charlotte, Dante, Ethelberga, and Felix, the standard names that you encounter in real life. And I have created for each of these students some fake quiz grades, a fake midterm 1 grade, a fake midterm 2 grade, and a fake final grade. So, what are we going to do with this grade book? Well, we're going to do some calculations. Now, so far, we've been using select in dplyr to choose columns. And the way we've done this is we have listed the column names in full. We've actually written them out. But this can be quite cumbersome, in particular when you're working with large and complicated tibbles. So there is a very handy feature called tidyselect that provides a collection of functions and operators that make selection easier and a lot faster. So for details, you can click on this link to view the documentation for tidyselect. But I am going to show you some examples. Let's take a quick look and see what we can do with the gradebook. All right, so using what we already know about dplyr, if we wanted to just choose the 3 quizzes, we could write gradebook, pipe, select quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3. Now that was easy enough, but a while back I taught a course that had 11 quizzes. And it would have been really tedious to type out quiz 1, quiz 2, all the way up to quiz 11. It also might have been really easy to accidentally forget one. So suppose I wanted to compute the average grade on all the quizzes, and suppose I left out quiz 9. That wouldn't be very good. Turns out there's a better way to do this using tidyselect. The command starts with, starts_with, allows us to select columns based on a common prefix. What does that mean? Well, here I have a number of columns that all start with the word quiz. So using the command starts with quotes quiz, I can tell select, hey, go pull all the columns that have a name that starts with the letters Q, U, I, Z. And there they are. That's much easier than typing out quiz 1, quiz 2, quiz 3, all the way up to quiz 11, even though it's probably overkill when you only have 3 quizzes like I do here. If there's a starts with, you might have guessed that there's also an ends with. And ends with selects columns based on a common suffix. So here, if you recall, I have quiz 1 through quiz 3. I then had midterm 1, midterm 2, and final. So what I'm doing in the 2 lines of code in this block is selecting the 2 columns that end with the string 2. And there are indeed 2 of those, quiz 2 and midterm 2. Starts with and ends with carry out selection based on prefixes and suffixes. But sometimes you might want to select based on some other part of a column name. That's easy using the command contains. Contains selects columns that contain a particular quiz. This is again slightly silly, but a different way that I could have selected the columns that begin with quiz is by specifying the string IZ. The only columns that contain IZ are indeed those 3. Now, sometimes you've got lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of columns, and you're really worried that you might accidentally use a selection operation that pulls out a column you don't want. So you might want a little bit more flexibility to specify exactly what the pattern of naming conventions that you used for each column is. So for example, suppose I didn't just want to get all the quizzes, and I didn't just want to get things that ended in 2. I in particular wanted to get quizzes 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Or here, quizzes 2 and 3. Well, there are other commands that can be used for more complicated selections. Here's one example, num_range. So this selects based on both a prefix and a numeric range. It's a very common situation to find yourself in. So here I'm specifying that I want all the columns that begin with quiz and end with 2 or 3. If you know something about regular expressions, you may be interested to check out the helper function matches. If you don't know anything about regular expressions, you can take a look at this Wikipedia page, which is quite useful. In many situations, the simple tools that I've shown you won't necessarily be enough to select exactly what you want. But in fact, tidyselect is extremely flexible. And the command matches allows you to use arbitrary regular expressions to select the columns that you want. In short, regular expressions are a simple programming language for choosing structured blocks of text, selecting them, and possibly doing complicated find-replace operations. They're pretty much the lingua franca of text processing across all sorts of different programming languages, and R has full support for regular expressions as well. All right, well, we've got a new command. This one is where. It's another example of a tidyselect function. And what does this one do? Well, it's a bit different from the ones that we've seen before, which they accepted sort of strings and vectors as inputs. This one actually accepts a function as an input. So what it does is it applies that function to every column of the tibble. And then it returns the columns where the function returns a true. So what you're doing is you're writing a test to check whether a certain column contains the things you want. And you can write any function at all that you like. I've decided here to use a very simple example. I'm going to supply the function isNumeric. What this does is it checks a vector to see if it's a numeric vector. And if you recall from our lectures on basic R programming, numeric vectors include double vectors and also integer vectors. So what this command will do, gradebook pipe select where is.numeric, is check every single column of the tibble. And if that column is a numeric vector, it will return the column, otherwise it will not. And you can see that what we've got here are all the columns marked double, and none of the other columns, I believe the only other one that we had, in fact, in the gradebook was the student's name. So this is perhaps not the most exciting example, but you can certainly imagine yourself in other situations where a test applied to each column could be a really helpful way of doing selection. When you're in a situation like that, where is your friend? All right, that is the end of this segment, so it's time for you to carry out some exercises on your own. I'm going to ask you to play around a bit with the ends with and contains commands. And then we're going to celebrate a very belated May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. The dplyr package actually includes a built-in dataset called Star Wars. So take a look at this dataset using the glimpse function to get a quick overview. And then please read the associated help file. What I would then like you to do is carry out a few exercises. First, to select only the columns of Star Wars that contain character data. Next, to select only the columns whose names contain an underscore. And finally, to select only those columns that are either numeric or whose names end with the word color.